So we have Casey and Casey's cat. So great honour.
My apologies for the cat.
Don't apologise. The cat's most welcome.
Oh, because he's worried that the phone might fall.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yes.
Okay, so this is our normal Sunday meeting, but also the last period of our Bow Sesshin, and I think we're all very happy that it went well. So it's not ever particularly easy, and that's why I'm sat up in the air in a chair, because my knees and lower back decided it had enough. So I've been talking about, because it's Rohat's, the time of the Buddha's enlightenment, been talking about his enlightenment. One of the questions I had was, what did the Buddha say when he first realized that he was enlightened? And I realized I didn't mention he came first to the acknowledgement of the Four Noble Truths, and then the dependent origination. And he said, I've seen the ridge maker and it's destroyed. The house will not be built again. Birth and death have ended, along with all fear. And the reason for that is it's the end of wants. So the Buddhist teaching is really easy to find these days on the internet. It's better that you know a little bit what you're looking for and don't get caught in some of the less accurate stuff that's out there. Wikipedia at the moment is pretty good. Wikipedia, I've seen change over time as different editors get on it. There's some fundamental Hindu teachers who seem to be getting in there, because every so often it's Buddha as a manifestation of Krishna, which is their belief. But the Dharmachakra Sutra, the first turning of the wheel of the law, is easily available. The translation by Bhikkhu Bodhi is very good, and I would recommend everyone to read that, even if we're in the Zen. Which brings me just quickly to say, people say, oh, don't rely on the sutras, throw them out, just a distraction. I've heard that quite a bit. You don't hear it much in China, sometimes in Japan, but even rarely there. So if you look at the Six Patriarchs Platform Sutra, he says, don't denigrate the sutras, because if you do, it's a great sin. So I'll stick with him. I'm a great fan of, as the people here would have realised, because I've been talking about him quite a bit in the last 3 days. So that was what he realised. He didn't want to teach, and then he decided that perhaps he could teach traditionally at the prodding of gods and devas. Deva's a hard term to translate. It's not God as we think of God in Christian terms. It's more like Saint George, the ethereal saints, than God. But anyway, they pushed him. So he went off, and he thought, who can I teach? I can teach my old friends who I trained with for many years. And on the way, he bumped into actually to a merchant, and he said to the merchant said, you look a bit unusual. He said, I'm like no other on earth. I am the awakened one. I am the Buddha, fully enlightened. He said, I don't know about that, but you seem seemed to be a nice chap. What do you say? He said, the end of all wants is the way to happiness. He said, I don't know about that, but I'll, just in case you're right, I'll make you an offering of this food and on my way to Kabul, Afghanistan. And off he went. So he found his friends, he took those. And when he first walked in, they said, oh, look, here comes that overfed, luxury-ridden Siddhartha, who gave up our practice of austerities and has just been feeding his face. Let's all ignore him. But I noticed there was just something about him, a radiance that it was impossible to ignore. And so he took the first turning of the wheel there, which is a beautiful sutra, as I say. Please read it online. He spent his entire life living his own practice in the way that he taught. And he certainly wasn't a do as I say, not as I do. He was a do as I do, and I might say something about it. So his life is exemplary in that way. And he taught at many different levels. And they say that when he was talking to a group of people, they could all understand everything he meant. And some of the more esoteric texts say that when he actually had a large audience, he would speak, but he was actually manifested in many Nirmanakaya teaching manifestations. And so that the Chinese could hear the Chinese and the Kushans could hear him in Kushan and Sanskrit and Pali. Doesn't matter what your language was, you could understand. And the teaching was given at different levels. So we, in the food chants, we pay homage to the Sudama Pundarika Sutra, the Lotus of the Wonderful Law, which is probably the most venerated of all the Mahayana teachings. And Mahayana and Hinayana are fully explained in that sutra as just being expedient means for people with different predispositions. So after his time, more teachings came through as people began to systemize it, and there was a large Abhidharma, the other higher Dharma, which is the philosophy of the Buddha, and that's where he talks about, or is extracted from his talks, the philosophy behind. A couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, Doug was talking about the 7 factors of enlightenment that comes out the Abhidharma. From a Zen point of view, people would say, well, they're not correct. But in the relative realm, in this realm, when you're dealing with normal people, they are correct. So if the jealous, well, that's not one of them, there's the antidote. So in that way, it's not very different from modern psychology. And it was just systemized in that way. I can say, as I have in my other sanghas in Pennsylvania, I have many psychologists. I have some here, that psychology is very helpful to people, but it does change. There's fashions in it. I remember in the 70s it was the trauma triangle and cycles of trauma, Freudian, Jungian. The beauty of the Buddhist teaching at 2600 years is pretty well fixed. It's still very valid. And so the suttas, the Pali Sutras and the Theravadins, a lot of people denigrate those, please don't. Most of them are actually in the Chinese canon and in the Japanese Tripitaka and are part of our Zen canon. They're not greatly studied, but they are there. So the sutras were considered to have been developed into the Mahayana, although the roots of the Mahayana are clearly visible in the earlier teaching too. And I suspect, and this is a personal opinion, purely personal, really personal, I can tell you, lots of teachers don't agree with me, but I think that the Mahayana was probably kept back a little bit and was more esoteric, passed on in the early days, and I'm talking now sort of 200 BC to 200 AD. And there was the public teaching and there was the private teaching, and that was what the Mahayana grew out of. There's lots of Buddhist scholars that would have me crucified for saying that, but it's a personal belief. When we talk about the relatives as opposed to the absolute truths, there's lots and lots we can say, because this is relative. We're on 49th Street. 49th Street is in Oakland. It's in California. They're all facts. They're all man-made facts, because we actually are just on a piece of land here, which was once Ohlone land. I mean, but it's just land. Before the Ohlone, it was just land. At one time, it wasn't land; it was under the water, and it got uplifted in there. So, there's contingent facts that are unassailable. And then we get into the things that are much harder to talk about: the nature of emptiness, the nature of oneness. No barriers, no separation between dharmas and things. Some people, including the Dalai Lama, try to unite some of these things through modern particle physics. And in one of the sanghas I used to belong to, I had a pretty good PhD candidate in cosmology, so I used to have some nice times talking to him. And there probably is something that can be found now, but it needs to be done carefully. Just as I often say, Buddhism isn't and should never be folk psychology. We're not into theories of psychology, and that if you stick to the Buddhist teaching, that's known, you can talk about it. When it comes to the absolute, the Tathagata, which is another name for the Buddha, the one who has gone to suchness. If you look at Jack Kerouac, he translates it really nicely as that runs through everything, which I think is a good translation. And much of what he says I don't particularly agree with, but in that I think it's beautiful. His translation of the Heart Sutra is pretty good, actually. Different words, but then we come to the idea that everybody's a Buddha, everybody's teaching. And whilst I agree with that, at some level, when you look at the life of Jack Kerouac, he was a pretty messed up alcoholic towards the end of his life, had some pretty bad attitudes about things. I'm not running him down. He's an entertaining reader to read, but he's not the purest of teachers. And then if we take everybody as a teacher, well, what exactly are we going to learn from Manson and the Manson family. It's hard to see their Buddhahood shining forth. I don't doubt that they have Buddha nature, don't doubt it at all. Don't doubt that they occasionally showed Buddha nature to one another. But you wouldn't really want to build a society on their teachings like we do Shakyamuni's. So Shakyamuni's main thing was, I've tried a life of, I was talking about this earlier, I've tried a life of absolute luxury and hedonism, and it's low, degrading, and not leading to happiness. And I've tried austerities which are painful, grind you down, forget the proper word, grinds you down and is not leading to happiness. I teach a way that is neither that, nor not that. I teach a middle way. So now we're into the higher teachings again of this is absolute truth. I often see people talking about the original face or the original face before you was born, one nature, the shining alaya, vijnana, the eighth consciousness, the storehouse consciousness. Many things like that are available, but you have to be careful, anatta, not self, not to project self just into something that is more subtle and just a higher, more refined self. You can keep going, so there's this refined self that looks at the self, and this happens in people talking to my cosmologist friend, well, what was before the Big Bang? And we can't say. The Buddha had a really good answer to this. He said, if you need to know all the facts before you start the practice, you're like somebody who's got an arrow stuck in him. I'm sure you all know this sutra. He's got an arrow stuck in him and he says, yeah, that's got to come out because it's going to kill me. But before you take it out, I need to know what kind of wood the arrow was made out. And what is the point made out of? And is it a triangular point or a rounded point? And the feathers, are they bird feathers? Are they from an owl? Are they from a parrot? What kind of bird feathers? Before you do that, I need to know who shot the arrow and how it was shot and where it came from, and then he's dead. So rather than worrying about all these facts, pluck out your arrow. And if do you all know the wheel of, again, becoming this, the Dharma Chakra wheel? There's many of them. Perhaps I can give a talk on one day. But there's a guy there that starts off with an arrow in his eye. And that is the interaction of the visible realm through the eye into the consciousness. That was the next thing that Buddha taught after. So that's actually quite high. And most people say, well, yeah, that's karma, that's difficult. Don't really agree with karma. I don't believe in rebirth. I'm a pretty good Buddhist, but well, it reminds me of my dad. My dad was a devout Christian who didn't believe in original sin, didn't believe in a virgin birth, didn't believe in the resurrection, and didn't believe in heaven. So I said, Dad, there's not a lot left. He said, well, I think there's somebody up there keeping an eye on you. So that was the extent. And that's enough. So now I'll just briefly finish up with beliefs in China and Japan. So there's popular Buddhism in China, where They're very much like my dad. Buddha this, Buddha that. Oh, Buddha help me. I'm going to the temple. I'm going to make a few coppers, offer him, and hope that I have a better crop. And that kind of Buddhism has gone on forever. It's not wrong. It's beneficial. It's helpful. We shouldn't denigrate it. Then there's people who say, well, the only way is to go in and be a monk. And then there's people who say, well, no, don't necessarily be a monk, just be a lay person. They see the bodhisattvas as real people that are out there wandering around. They may be. But when you have the mind of compassion, you have the mind of Avalokiteshvara. When you have the mind of wisdom, you have the mind of Manjushri. When you have the mind of Tara, you're using skillful means to help people. So at the very, very, very subtlest, you take a raft, and this is the Genjo Koan. He talks about a boat on the ocean. Is the shore moving or are you moving? Does the fish know that there's a universe outside of his water? If you look at all of Dogen's teachings, they're very subtle. But the thing about emptiness, skillful means, and what a being really is, can't be put in words. And so now we get to the patriarchs. I went to patriarch number 22. I can't think of a name at the moment, top of my head. But I asked him what he thought about this, and he punched me in the nose. What did I do wrong? And he said, "Oh no, go back. He loves you very much." So that's direct teaching. If with me being a karate ninth dan, if I punched you all in the nose, you'd know it, and it wouldn't help you at all. And at least I could get to see you all when I'm in Stockton or wherever they put me. So you can't do those things. They're very specific to one person at one time, and I don't think it's necessarily a good thing to try to generalize on them. And I see that a lot. It's like, oh, when you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha. That was to one man, to one man who had a conception of a Buddha that he had clung on to, discriminated with his discriminating mind, and it was an impediment to him. So that's why his teacher told him something shocking, which shocked him to the point that he realised that there's not a Buddha out there, there's only a Buddha here. And that is always available to us. The Buddhist teaching is always available to us. You don't have to look for it in that way. You can look within yourself. And my recommendation with sutras and stuff is, don't read them at the start and get a load of ideas. Get a load of ideas and then see if you can confirm them or not in the Buddhist literature. Use it as a fact checker, something that's greatly needed these days. Thank you. So, 20 minutes. Got time for lots of questions is the one with this Sangha. So.
Can you tell me who the sixth patriarch is? That Huineng?
Huineng,
The
yeah.
platform sutra was Huineng's.
Huineng.
And would you recommend Red Pine version of or is there a certain
The
version of the platform sutra?
There's actually very many translations of the Platform Sutra now. Red Pine is not one that appeals to me.
Okay.
I actually met him a couple of times in Hong Kong back in the 80s. Thomas Cleary's probably more technically correct. I actually quite like Charles Look. Charles Look was a Dharma buddy of one of my teachers, so I kind of relate to it. Yeah, and as I've said many times, when you go from a foreign language with foreign concepts into our language with our concepts, and lots of people,
the translation that's why it's so important. Because
right.
You have to have a good understanding of the teaching in order to translate it properly, or you could miss the mark. Right?
Yeah, but you have to be really careful. So I used to work at the Hong Kong Buddhist Printing Press publications, and the translator there used to say you have to be extremely careful not to put your ideas down. Mm-hmm. People are not interested in your ideas; they're interested in what actually Hui Nang meant. So, and an example I always use for that is go get Chaucer out, which is about 500 years later than Hui Nang, and try reading it in its early modern English. It's almost incomprehensible. And the other problem that people have is they want to make a nice book that's readable. And as I'm partially dyslexic, I don't find any book nice to read. So.
I greatly enjoyed your talk. Thank you for the vast overview, backwards and forwards and sideways. Thank you. Going back to the Buddha.
Going back to my professor days when I used to see a student scribble something down.
Interdependence. Interdependence. Interdependence is the teaching for me. In the first passage of the Heart Sutra, all material forms are empty of inherent self-existence, free of characteristics, marking limits, never born, therefore never destroyed. It's the first passage of the Heart Sutra. And our mind, which is what psychology is about, sees things in binary forms. And so we think of things as good and bad. And it takes that little extra step of emptiness is form, form is emptiness, which appears in the middle of the sutra. And to me, personally, what it means is that everything exists in potential. And so I am here right now, it's very practical. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking to you. And in a parallel way, I'm in Brazil raising 5 children. Mm-hmm. Everything exists in potential. I cannot go into the prison. But the communication is available to me. I just need to believe it. Mm-hmm. And the key is believing. Believing that everything is interdependent.
Okay.
And then let me just finish.
Sure.
Thank you. And from that is born, may all beings be well, which is my teacher's teaching. And that to me holds the entire Dharma. Because I've never found anything that excludes it, going all the way. Mm-hmm. And again, interdependence means that to me.
So in the Zen tradition, they talk less about interdependence, although Thich Nhat Hanh into being brought in a lot. They would normally speak about that as non-discriminating mind. So just not picking and choosing. And then at the very highest level, that doesn't make any sense at first thought in this realm, is that time is the unreal accumulation of karma and fundamentally doesn't exist. And so the period when you were in the prison is permanent fact, always there. And the potential you talk about would be normally related to the alaya vijnana consciousness, the storehouse. So, but again, I think we get really to the point that once you get into these subtle words, you probably do need a punch in the nose, because you're going to miss the point every time. I caught that from you.
Well, yeah. Can you go back to just when you very started? You said you talk about the non-discriminating mind versus interconnectedness. Interdependence. Sorry, but so you're saying in place of interdependence?
Yeah. So if you
Those seem like two totally different concepts.
no, so if you don't discriminate anything, there can be no boundaries between them. So the mind of non-discriminations aspect is interdependence of all dharmas and beings.
Oh, yeah, I just wasn't.
Yeah, language again.
Thank you for wonderful talk from you. I guess I had something kind of fun happen last night that I shared about it. Anyways, I was kind of like piecing together your two talks. I mean, for me, like in the first talk about what does it mean to avow our karma, and then the second talk, like what is refuge. I was sitting in my room last night, and I had like the words of a great wise teacher come to me. That teacher's name is Walter from the Big Lebowski.
You want to tell? I can get you to tell.
But the phrase that came to me is in the movie. At some point, he says, I'll paraphrase. He says, "Disregard all your problems, dude. Let's go bowling." And I guess it struck me. It struck me last night. Of course, he doesn't say disregard. It's just like screw it.
Yeah. I've seen the film several times. The dude abides is what resonates with me.
I guess it struck me last night like that for those guys in that situation, bowling was really a refuge. Like it was like this, very peaceful practice, and they could like drop all these problems that maybe were too big for them. And it kind of struck me there was a parallel there, and maybe it was intentional by the director, the Coen brothers, that bowling is like kind of like zazen, maybe. But like the phrase, disregard all your problems, I kind of thought like, well, is that really Buddhist? Because of course, like as you mentioned in your lecture yesterday, it's like fentanyl is like that's a refuge that leads to death. That's like bliss. And so I guess I'm trying to. I truly believe the teachings of Walter, but I guess it's like what is? I mean, you mentioned non-discriminating mind,
Right?
And it's like, I guess what is? How is zazen a refuge for us? Like if it was just bliss and we just forgot about all our problems, it doesn't seem like it's Buddhist. But if there's no, what Frank said yesterday about like refuge being something that brings joy, like it actually brings you joy and rest. Like it's like there's got to be like something good there, but at the same time, like just total bliss, isn't it?
So, if you're spending your time on the cushion trying to run away from your problems, you're very much like Walter and his buddies. So, if your total expectation in life is to live in a mean hole with guys coming and peeing all over your carpet, I hope you all know the film. So that's not bliss, right? Bowling is a distraction. They're running away from their problems. If you run away from your problems on the cushion, they will follow you and become magnified, because you can't run away from yourself. Wherever you, in the words of Bob Marley, if we're calling popular teachers, in the words of Bob Marley, no matter where you run, you'll find yourself there. So you can't run away from yourself. So what's the purpose of sitting on the cushion? Help all beings. May they realise wisdom. May they realise happiness, but mostly wisdom. Happiness is a shortcut to me, language-wise, as is love. Love actually doesn't exist in the classic Buddhist teaching.
Sharon, do you think, because one thing, like with regards to avowing our ancient twisted karma, and like Doug says, like we're not forgetting our karma, like we're not just saying like we're not, like just forget it all.
Yeah, we're not going bowling.
Because if I had amnesia, like total amnesia, I'd just be like, yeah, bowling. Like,
Yeah.
And I guess that is maybe what people kind of do just to survive, is to find little pockets of amnesia where it's like, I have all these problems, I'm just going to bowl like for a minute.
So you can get through life avoiding problems. That's picking and choosing mind. But you can actually face them. So the way I listened to what Doug was saying was that you take responsibility for them. You say, yeah, sure. That was then. This is now. In this moment, I have that choice. I always have freedom in the moment. And so you can look at your problems and perhaps see the cause of the problem. The Buddha would say, ultimately, the cause of all your problems is some hidden or unrecognized desire for something or other. So to want life, to want annihilation is another one that he says.
But like that, I guess like is that avowing? Avowing is not forgetting, but avowing is refuge. Like when we avow, like we're not forgetting what we did, and we're not like being irresponsible, but like we are somehow letting something go, or something that we can feel.
Well, we can let the past go because it's gone. Yeah. So we're in the realm of other teaching. Another teaching that I like is Jacob Marley dragging his giant chain in A Christmas Carol. I've forged this chain through greed and hatred. It's mightily heavy and follow me everywhere. Or he could just let go of the chain. Benny?
I wanted to thank you for something very precious, because in your talk you mentioned 49th Street, and something with my hearing and your accent made me hear it as 49th Street. And 49th immediately connected me to this beautiful castle of silence that we've been creating for the past few days. Like walking through foggy night. That connected me to the story about Elijah in the desert. And the story says that there was a very strong wind that was breaking the rocks. And then there was very strong noise, but God didn't come through this. And then there was a very thin silence. And this is how the word of God. And this silence, I guess, feels to me like love. And that's what we've been creating for the past few days. So how can we preserve it now? With all this talk. I don't know.
So the words of the Buddha are not to be found in his words. The truth of the Buddha exists outside of the words. That will be a thin silence.
In our Zazen, which is manifestation, our embodied manifestation of silence, when we get up and maintain our silence by just turning and starting Kinhin seamlessly, we can do that and walk out the door with that mind, is how to embody Zazen after it's over. As far as the profound truth of leaving your problems behind and go bowling, in the next lane is Jesus.
And you know you do
And
not.
you end up with a real problem bowling next to Jesus, as happened
You don't have
time after time every time you watch the movie. Likewise, this morning we had not Jesus, but one named after Christ, Christopher, walked in on this guy trying to leave his problems by sitting zazen, and in walks Chris, to
He looks more like Smokey than Grace.
Well, I didn't leapfrog over you anyway.
Your foot crossed the line, Smokey.
So the unexpected happens, and out of the unexpected is what's precious. So may we exist in this preciousness with delight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is that preciousness and unknowability that is the manifestation of our alaya consciousness, where everything is possible. And you know, you have a choice of Chris coming in, me and Keith in the face because he doesn't know he's there. Keith can either get angry, or he might say, wow, this is an opportunity for manifesting even more of my meditation. Now I must say, Keith didn't jump much. Because
My hips were frozen.
with my tendency towards PTSD and hypervigilance, as soon as I heard the door open, I thought, oh, what's that? I did open my eyes. But I was facing out. If I'd been facing the wall, I wouldn't have opened my eyes, because it would only have been a white wall.
Yeah, it was so, and I just said, it's like being alone in the room, we're so quiet, I could hear every footstep coming towards the door.
Right.
And I even like felt you hold the handle and saw the door. So I knew you were coming before the door even opens, because it was so.
So did you hear me go? Because I actually went through all three doors.
I did not.
Okay, now where would they have the entrance? So I hope I got a 33 and a 30% chance of getting it right. Not great odds, but.
So to me, this is the Buddhist teaching alive here, where may all beings be happy. We're a happy little crowd. We've just done 3 days of painful sitting on a cushion staring at a wall, wasting our time, good for nothing, and here we are, happy as anything, with release. Yeah. We have let go of those cares without us hiding from them. So, but the true beauty of Zazen is when, as Dogen says, when we sit, all of Oakland sat with us. All the world sat with us. And not just the people, we're all of the beings, all of the trees, all the little tiny beings, billions of them that live in Oakland. So, Charles.
I don't have a question, but I wanted to say that it has been an honor having you here. Thank you.
If I say anything that sounds wise, it's just something I picked up.
I figured that.
Nick, to your question about refuge, there's actually a passage in the Heart Sutra. Bodhisattvas never generate awareness of intermediate attainment or reach for some supreme spiritual goal. They abide in bodilessness, standing the ground, in the groundlessness of perfect wisdom.
Yeah, so that's the manifestation of emptiness and wisdom together.
Yeah, and
And it's from those two that all the Buddhas are born. That's next little bit. I tend not to think of you. You're using Lex Hinton's translation. I tend to think of others, but if you go without the words, I wish I could read that more in the Chinese than I can. I can't. Yeah. I think we got quite a few people online, so. Please unmute yourself and join in. There's nothing worse than sitting on Zoom as an observer. Rachel? No, that's your hair. I thought your hair was your hands. You're only this big to me. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I joined late, so unfortunately I missed the beginning of your talk this morning, Angyo. And so I do feel a little bit like an observer. Also, it's a little bit difficult to hear everyone in the room. So yeah, I do feel a little bit more like a student observer today, if I may.
Well, as we were saying earlier, the main thing is showing up. So thank you for showing up. Was Ben? Yeah, please, Ben.
Thank you for your wonderful talk. And I would love to just leave it at gate, paragate, parsam gate, angyo.
Out, blocking it out. It's right behind me. So, the way I look at gate is when everything that's gone to the other shore has gone there, so has all means of saying. We don't need to beach the boat in case we want to go back. You're on the other shore. Who knows what it is? Who can put it into words? Don't even try. Gate, paragate, parasamgati, bodhi. And some of the translations leave off bodhi swaha. Hail the awakening. possibly, well, like all mantras, every part is equally important. But hail the awakening. Thank you, Ben. Joaquin?
Thank you for your. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for your talk. Likewise, I could not understand everything you said, and I had quite some rough weeks. And but you were talking about the boat right now, about the boat, and it reminds me. I was under the shower and I thought about boats. You know, Pericles' boat. Pericles, a Greek, he was shipping somewhere else, and then he was meeting a wonderful princess, and the boat was on the shore. Years and years and years, and the boat fell down, and they just put new wood on it, and after a few years, the boat was a boat, still the boat, but it was not the boat. It was not the original boat, even if it looks like. So I thought, it's like we, you know, our body is like the erythrocyten, the red blood parts, erythrocyten. They live for about 8 days, and then they vanish, and we get new one. And all our cells are new, and after a few years, we are completely new. This body is completely new. So I thought about guilt. I did something wrong. So I thought about 10 years later, who is guilty? Well, I thought, it's not me, whoever I am. I thought, this body did this and did that. It wasn't me. So I thought it would be a good thing because it's about attachment to my old body. So I said, and I thought, I say goodbye to my old body. It's like a brother. I wish him a nice life somewhere else. And with a new body, I'm not guilty. I can forgive myself for whatever he or I did, and everything is clear. So I thought, sitting on a cushion for a few years, doing nothing, everything vanishes away, and I'm clear. Let's come to my thoughts. It seems to be a little crazy, but I found I was quite happy under my shower, you know?
Yeah. So
Thank you very much.
thank you. The other day I was talking in our group here about the formless repentance, where there's no self in that process. So guilt's a useful thing. Guilt and remorse are two guardians of virtue, because when you feel guilt and remorse, you know you did something wrong. Then you try to make the vow not to do it again. So you would be guilty if you kept doing the same thing. But if you repent it and let it go and move forward positively, it's a different thing. Thank you. Chris?
What I focused on was the other shore. When you're talking about the other shore, that's really a dualistic view, and what occurred to me is that maybe we're already at the other shore, and it's just having a realization of that.
Well, it's not a physical crossing.
Also about we kind of zeroed in on unexpected things. If things are kind of consistent and predictable, I think it makes us somewhat complacent. At least it does me. Unexpected things kind of force us to really apply some of what we have learned and the insights we've had and the practice we've had. We learn how to apply that in a dynamic environment. This week has been had a lot of those things happen, where you just can't do the usual thing. You got to make something work, and there's always alternative ways of dealing with difficult situations.
So in the Buddhist teaching, they would be called habit energies. Or they can be the patterns of behavior that grow out of repeated patterns of karma. And so they become comfortable.
Yeah.
And so you are likely, I always used to be amazed at my aunt who could watch TV, hold a conversation and knit at the same time complicated cardigans for people. But that was just habit for her. It wasn't a skill. It wasn't like, wow. It was a skill, but it wasn't a skill.
So for me, what motivates me, to really try to do that well is, the realization that there are people that really count on us, that interdependence is really alive and meaningful and important to get right to the best of our ability. And sometimes you just hit a brick wall unexpectedly, and you have to figure out a way around that, not just for our own sake, but for the sake of others. And
so from a strict Zen point of view, who is this self and other that Chris is talking about?
It's our Sangha, is what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
So continue.
Yeah.
well, I don't know how specific. I mean, you want me to get specific?
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, like on Thursday, I just realized, just from talking to a couple of the guys at the prison, how much our being there means to them, how important it is, and it's just a responsibility, that, and I go, I'm not sure I can fulfill that responsibility, but we ended up talking about Sangha, and they had a lot of questions, and I hadn't prepared any answers for those questions. But what I told them is that to me, Sangha is about seeing the Buddha in yourself, and then seeing that Buddha in others, seeing that same Buddha in the others. And it's not two Buddhas, it's only one Buddha. And they got that. I don't know exactly what I said specifically, but they seemed to get that one, and that made it more sense rather than them just taking care of each other and stuff. Yeah, but it really boils down to just seeing that perfection, that Buddha nature in one another. And that kind of helps guide us, I guess. Even Hans got that one. He actually turned, he never does that. He turned to me and said, that was really good. He never does that.
It is good.
So yeah, it really is good. And again, that's no separation between self and other. You can recognize it, your inherent Buddha nature, you can recognize it in the prisoners you're dealing with, and you, in that case, managed to convey that idea, that truth, to Hans, and it resonated with him. So that's the Buddhist teaching in actualization.
Yeah. So, we're going to have to make some adjustments of some, to some degree or another, and I guess we'll just have to see how that works out. But I think we have to navigate our way through that. And,
yeah, that's one of the problems of life, is we're always navigating through it. So, in our little boat.
Yeah. So
tossed on.
You can't wait till we get to the other shore. So I guess that's going back to the other shore thing. And sometimes I feel like, well, maybe this is the other shore.
It can't be anywhere.
Otherwise, we're putting it off somewhere else, and
it can't be anywhere else. This is the other shore, isn't it? Where else could it be?
Yeah.
So, but this is again the danger that we get when we try to talk about the absolute in relative words.
Yeah.
If you think of it as another shore, then it falls down. How are we going for time? I'm not sure we're supposed to finish.
We have unlimited time, so.
Brady, Don's not said anything.
All right.
Frank, I don't think either. So we have quite a few.
Yeah, no, I really like.
I'm not being rude. Nina is on her way, and I was just trying to see if she'd arrived yet, but I didn't think she would. But my phone's still working, because there's no point in telling her the phone from MacArthur if I got all the phones off and nobody's watching them. Brady, please.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really liked the talk. I really liked your shares, everyone, and yeah, I'm gonna have a question or thing to say. Yeah, it was. I really liked your whole. You're talking about Buddhism. I actually don't know very much about Buddhism, because I was raised Christian, so I was taught Buddhism is bad. But it was very interesting because it really correlates with a lot of the things that I came to understand and was kind of taught in Christianity. It's similar message, sort of like God is within you kind of thing. But it was really insightful. I mean, it was helpful to hear all that. It's just helpful to hear the correlations that every kind of religion is hopefully, most of them at least, are teaching the same thing. They're hitting some sort of point of spiritual truth that's kind of coming through, and then finding that helps to weed out all the other things that aren't really spiritual truth, because you can see the kind of the more core essence that's trying to be conveyed. But I don't know. I'm grateful to be here. I'm thankful for the talk.
We're grateful to have you. Thank you. Done? You're muted. Don, did you wish to speak?
thank you for noticing me. Actually, not so much words, just gratitude. Gratitude for your faithfulness in taking the leap and paying it forward for all of us and for everyone here in Oakland and on Zoom for coming together. I found myself marveling. I was listening to your talk and then listening to the responses of people, and this was a perfect, crystal clear example of Dharma coming out of one person's mouth, going into another person's ears, no separation, and the comments and the interaction just kept clarifying and widening and enriching the first utterances. This is real and this is happening, and so I'm just grateful for that, and may it continue.
Thank you very much. None of us have perfect truth, but as a Sangha, so I remember one of the first meetings I had with Doug, and we were talking, and his question was, it takes a Buddha with a Buddha to work out the karma. What's your opinion of that? I said, that's exactly what we're doing. And I actually felt that at the time, that Sangha comes together and strengthens and reinforces the Buddhist teaching, particularly if you can keep the egos out of it and it's not, my way, at this place we do it that way and you're all wrong. And that's harmful. And I think because that is so harmful, that's why one of the almost unforgivable sins that the Buddha spoke of was causing disputes and division in the Sangha. So, since his time, of course, there's been many, but he does warn bitterly against it. We have much more in common than we have of difference. And people need to recognise that. Is that everyone? Or is Frank hiding?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angyo, for all of the teachings during Rohatsu. The experience for me is how Buddhism is sometimes transmitted in two words, compassion and wisdom. And what I heard when Benny said the castle of silence, what I heard was the great making of compassion that he felt in the castle of silence. The holding of the silence by the Sangha was compassionate for Benny. And his ability to articulate it is the wisdom. And what I hear today, what gives me so much joy in the Sangha is the Nirmanakaya of compassion as we experience it together. And each of our contributions through relative wisdom is a manifestation of the Dharmakaya. And that just gives me great joy to be here with you and others, but all of us together as one. I love the Sangha. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. No mud, no lotus, no survival, no survivor's guilt, no poison, no antidote, no storm, no rainbow have arisen from the shares today. These distillations, and really grateful to be here. I don't believe in coincidences, so the causes and conditions that arose for this to happen. Thank you.
Coincidences, I tend not to believe. So I was out on Thanksgiving afternoon driving around in the sun, and I decided to show Nina my Dharma friend Myoshin's house. He's just moved to New Jersey. I said, let's swing by and make sure that it's okay, because he'd left it empty. And I said, I really miss him. And we rounded the corner. I said, there's his house. And there's Myoshin. He came out the front door because he was back checking it as well. And he'd just driven for 4 hours from New Jersey to check on the house. And he was there for 20 minutes. And in that 20 minutes, it reminded me of the Sandokai? When arrows meet, head point to point. It's not by chance. So, it was shocking. We just had a very brief talk, but it was like, wow. No coincidence. So I think I can sum up what you just said in a teaching that I heard on Sunday, last Sunday. We started Rohatsu in Pennsylvania, Sangha last Sunday morning. We did a full service, Soto service, and sat for a while. And the teacher there, who's in Baltimore, because my Sangha is Maha Sangha, mostly Zen, spread all over. And she said, I'm going to give a teaching that I learnt from, and I can't remember who she said it was. It was a lady, but I can't remember. But she said, the teaching is on non-discrimination and duality. Are you ready? We all went, yeah, on Zoom and in a Zendo. She went, not two. Thank you. And I'll end on that, because I can't do better than that.
May our intentions equally extend to every being and place with the true merit of the Buddha way. Beings are numberless, we vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, we vow to end. Dharma gates are boundless, we vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, we vow to become. Thank you, everyone.
Before we leave our man, so what we're going to do is we're going to, if you could sign your name